Thank you, Mr. Frederick Gbcna. I think the hardest thing is trying to rush the chairperson of the council that invited you to the country, and you can quite easily get you back with immigration. But you can see the level of information that's available. You know, we can't cover everything that's available to all of us. And you can see the passion that Mr. Frederick Gbcna has in giving us this information. So we'll share later. And it's the kind of information that next week you'll be thinking, oh, this guy mentioned this. And you try to look for it. So we'll find a way of sharing this info. And thank you very much. I think we should give him another round of applause. Now, for selfish reasons, the next speaker studied as an electrical engineer in the UK, continued to design projects like Terminal 5 Heathrow, then moved to Australia. Started studying in Australia building services, did an MSc in that, MSc in Sustainable Design Sciences, so you can see where the commonality comes in with the crowd. Worked in Australia, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, a CEO of Web Limited, which is a sustainable consultancy in Kenya, and also volunteers as the Kenya Green Building Society chairperson. That person is me. So I'll be presenting. It's quite odd introducing yourself, but just to talk about the East African sector. So the slideshow will talk about an angle from the Kenya Green Building Society, as well as being a consultant in Kenya as a sustainable consultant. So you can see the comparison, see where Kenya is going as well, and see the opportunities, because we're inviting this business. You know, one of the things we pull is the skills are available. If not in Kenya, they're available in Africa. And that's what we keep saying. So hopefully you'll see opportunities there as well. So just moving forward quickly, we've done that introduction. One thing we need to understand is the purpose of the green building councils and societies and associations in Zambia. The World Green Building Council and the Green Building Councils collectively promote, encourage, and facilitate green building. So the core function is green building. And it's a good thing to have a center that looks after that, because if we're to rely on government, they have enough things on their hands, especially in Africa, especially in Kenya. We have security issues that you wouldn't even go to the government and start asking about certain things. So the people themselves have to do this. The main thing we focus on with all these different councils is advocacy and promotion. I think there's a bit of that going on. And we've hired someone else in the KGBS today, Mrs. Catherine. Provide resources. So a central point, we can share all the information we have. Like this, the presentations today I'll share in Kenya as well. Education and training. We've done education here for the last 2 days, and we try to do the same across Africa. So we get a knowledgeable, internationally benchmarked person who knows green building to the international level. What we had in Kenya was people started doing different training, 1-day courses, 2-hour courses, and everyone was calling themselves a green building professional. So that's where greenwashing starts. Then lastly, but quite importantly, is the rating tools. Because how green is green? You know, how tall is tall, how fat is fat? Without those metrics of measurement, we don't really know whether we're going forward or backward. The Doctors Association are very far ahead compared to the building industries or the cars, which we're very happy to go and check the fuel consumption, look at all the different models set in, and they always make it better every year. Even phones, you know, we're on iPhone 6S or 6A. There'll be iPhone 7 coming out. Why should we have that in buildings? You know, so green buildings is more or less. I look at it that way with benchmarking. So the councils, there's a few there. This is quite an old photo from Google, showing all the different councils around the world at that time. I think it was in 2008. You can see where Africa was. It was just South Africa, who had just learned from Australia. Now moving on, bringing it home, that's the situation currently. So we have Zambia that has set up, congratulations. Zimbabwe as well, Mozambique, Tanzania, Ethiopia. They're busy talking about it, and I'm sure they'll be on it soon enough this year. Uganda as well, and Kenya. And I'm sure there's many more where the discussions are ongoing. So everyone wants to do green buildings. Everyone wants to benchmark. And so far, a lot of these countries are adopting green stuff. So we can have a level playing field across Africa in how we're designing buildings. We adopted it in Kenya because we don't have design standards. Building design standards are dated 1967. So you can imagine, they're colonial building standards. So everyone comes into the country and they use British standards or American standards. The use of green stuff allows us to use inherent standards, which are the standards, which you know refer to CIBSE and British standards. So it was easier for the engineers to adopt and use those standards and have proper benchmarking. The work now is to obviously link that to the local council and adapt the local council from colonial standards to what we're using now. And the best thing about it is, once we have the cash, we can develop our own standards. But starting from nowhere is a problem. So far we know we must. And the reason I've added the late Dr. Wangari Maathai's photo there is because she started talking about this ages ago. 1978, she was fighting the Kenyan government already about fuel consumption back then, when Nairobi was so tiny. And I think she just got tired in trying to educate people then and just said, guys, plant trees. The best thing you can do is plant trees. So now we are very good at planting trees. We've planted a lot of trees, but people stop there. You know, one of the things is you find a company that's polluting on one side and then planting trees on the other side. And they say they're green, and they have very nice photos of the CSR. So one thing we're trying to move as the Kenya Green Building Society is that, yes, plant trees, but that was the beginning back then in 1978. Let's move on. And also, environment is not CSR. It should be core business, because if sustainability is core business, there's environment, people, and of course, economical. So a few images there of native tree planting in schools. There's a lot of greening of schools going on. So we'd be happy to partner with yourselves with Namibia Green Schools as well. There's a lot of pilot projects. We're also using the public and education building tool from South Africa. So it gives us a framework of seeing what is greening schools, not just the planting of trees, as I mentioned. Just wanted to mention the International Labour Organization there as a logo. Part of the Green Jobs program that assisted or started the Zambia Green Building Association are also in Kenya helping the same element. So there's all this funding, sustainable funding, that has been made available to Kenya for a Green Jobs program. But I alone don't understand what green buildings are or green jobs. How do you rate them? So one of the things is we've partnered with them to provide training to green schools. I think all of us are in green jobs. If you're a sustainable consultant and you're doing this and you're certifying buildings, you're in a green job. So I would suggest probably checking the same thing in Namibia. There might be funding available to do certain things that we're talking about today. And some of that funding is allowable on projects. So if you have sustainable features on your project, you get a very, very low interest rate. So PVs and all those technical items are sort of an excuse not to go with them. Similar to Namibia, there was a lot of silo efforts, silo projects around Kenya for the longest time, but we've tried to bring it all together. So this was UN Habitat, trying to green residential sector. So they had to do 400,000 units per year using energy efficiency standards. And you can see the amount of direct CO2 they were looking at. They're looking at. because this is year in, year out. So they've agreed to partner with us, Kenya Green Building Society, because we're more or less doing the same thing. And with the society being membership-based and funding coming from sponsors, there's a lot of these things going on. If I just show you the rest. Utility company initiatives. So Kenya Power started giving out CFLs, compact fluorescents, to rural homes so that they could save energy, because they knew if they don't save energy, we'll end up like South Africa at the moment. And it's quite expensive to build the power plants. So to save on the profits they had, they said it was cheaper to actually go around and give CFLs. And they saved the Kenya shillings 15 billion in 1 year. So now they've gone back and they're thinking, all right, it's only been 2 years. We need to change from CFLs to LEDs. Why didn't we go for LEDs in the first place? So this is where these initiatives need to talk to sustainability consultants, because back then we'd have said go for LEDs. Then you don't have to go back and create different visions and tread on your own toes. But it's a good initiative. Another one is EcoMark Africa, and hopefully you'll see them around your countries soon. An initiative with UNEP and all those bodies there. And what they're doing is creating an eco-mark for Africa for labeling materials, so that it's easier for people to actually buy green materials. They started with agriculture, because they felt that was the biggest need. They've done fisheries, forestry, tourism. Next is construction. So even the building blocks we're seeing here and all that, I would really encourage getting in touch with EcoMark on their website, because they're going around the continent trying to label this according to certain standards. And I'm sure they'll liaise with Gbcna, just so that we are able to know what EcoMark, Balance 2, Eco-Specifier, and the rest are. To move forward, there's Kenya Vision 2030. I don't know if there's a Namibia Vision.
Yeah, it must be said.
2030, yes. I also saw the South Africa Vision 2030. I'm really looking forward to 2030. There's a lot of stuff headed for 2030.
It's coming quick.
I think it'll be a year of just partying and achieving stuff. So the Kenya Vision 2030 has all these things that we're supposed to do. And if you look at that, which we reviewed, sustainability was put under environment. Green buildings was put under environment. Yet, all those things, tourism, occur between roads and hotels, more or less. Agriculture, manufacturing plants, roads. Wholesale and retail trade, buildings. Manufacturing, buildings. So everything happens in a building. So we've gone back to Kenya Vision 2030 to say, look, you can't put all that on there and say your target is that, but not have green building as the core of it. So now they have to go back to the drawing board and actually implement a lot of this. But sadly, there's a lot of documents in Parliament, but the first one that went through was the polygamy law. That was the first thing that went through when Parliament sat. So priorities are a bit different, and we need people to advocate and assist. Because when you say Kenya Vision 2030 is looking at sustainability or sustainable development, you expect green buildings to be at the core of it, not polygamy. Yes, you can have as many wives as you want in the non-green buildings. So at the same time, working in the background while dealing with these legal issues, we went ahead and contextualized not just one tool. We contextualized the office tool, public and education, retail. And the reason we did that was we don't have to go back. And the fourth one there is the residential tool. And that's the reason why I think we have more buildings now going for certification. But even more buildings want to go for certification. There's healthcare, there's communities. So we're putting a lot of pressure onto Gbcna. There's a lot of discussions going on licensing. There's also discussions with Australia. So basically we're taking this tool and initiative and working with it and making it better and using it more. And I think we can do the same in Namibia.
Yeah.
Contextualization was done by WSP in South Africa. They came to Kenya for a few weeks and we got Athena Properties sponsored the tour. UN Habitat and the Kenya Green Building Society, although then it was more of the founding guys, stakeholders like yourselves invited from the industry to come and go through and contextualize it. So moving on from there, the Kenya Green Building Society will update the tool. Which tool are we looking at? Same one you went through yesterday and the day before. Great stuff. The great thing about the tool is the categories. And all the tools are in these categories. So you have management, environmental quality, energy, transport, etc. So the board of Kenya Green Building Society had to sort of fit everything that we could see out there, all these different initiatives into this. And it actually made it easier to govern. Because in governing a council, you have to answer to the World Green Building Council and your local legal system, society rules and everything else. So for example, Mrs. Catherine in water fits squarely in water. So I'm sure every one of us can see where we fit in our different industries, in whatever we do. And this is the way we communicate so that people stop thinking it's architects or engineers or someone else. And the last one there, I think you mentioned a few times, socioeconomic. It's squarely on that social aspect of building. And it's been a new thing that to actually add that for contractors in the buildings that are going for certification. It's quite interesting. We can share some signage for socioeconomic that's been changed from English to Swahili to Chinese to Mandarin. Because a lot of our contractors on the major projects are Chinese, and the message has to get home. So just quickly, construction trend in Kenya. What we're looking at is all property types, how much we've been building. There's a lot happening. When you visit Nairobi, take some time to go around. There's buildings going up everywhere. So you can tell there's quite a bit of cash flow. There's a bit of trust, despite everything else that's happening, that the economy is growing. And actually the East African economy is purportedly the second largest growing after Asia. Construction industry is very high on that. So 2013, that was still climbing. And the targets under the Kenya Vision 2030 was that we built 200,000 houses a year. We only achieved 15,000 in 2013. I think 2014 might be around 20,000. So it looks like we're doing a lot, but we're not even reaching the targets we've set for ourselves. So from that you can see meeting that 2030 target or goal. We have to get into alternative technology, Stop doing what we did 20 years ago, which caused the problem. Let's use better alternative technology. So if someone asks if there's work in Kenya, yes, you can see. And this is just the housing. We're not even talking about the commercial sector. Now, what we have to do in Kenya, we have to adapt. Engineers, architects, the whole industry, all of us have to adapt. So these guys are adapting, actually. They're moving a shed. This is Mombasa. They're moving a shed from one end to another so they can sell their stuff under the shade. Actually, they do that quite a lot. Adaptation is moving away from the architect and developer have a chat, draw something, then they send it to the MEP team. They just throw things in there and say they've designed. Then it's given to the contractor who tries to fix things and tries to save money at the same time. Then the engineers go back and spend all their time on site trying to make things right. And you just wonder why they didn't do it in the first place during design. And then you as the owner of the building spend 2 years refixing it, rebuilding it, so to speak. That happens a lot in Kenya, and it's quite sad. This integrated approach, I think one of the things they say is, here's what I made earlier. So you get a drawing, I think they more or less change the name of the project, and I'm sure you know some people who do that. And I'm very encouraged by Karen Miller, but you went ahead with green building, whether there was certification in the country or not. So that's really good. The other thing we banned in projects, and I'll show you some projects, is the saying we don't do that in Kenya. No, we don't do that here. That's not available in Kenya. Us Kenyans don't do that. That's banned. And we're actually finding people who say that, all the way from design to through construction. The other thing as well is, here's Elizabeth. You want us to do a green building? How much will it cost? It's going to be expensive. And that's a myth. You know, the first thing I point out is, what's sustainability? I can't be here talking about sustainability, yet haven't even looked at the economical balance of whatever I'm consulting on. So it has to have economic prosperity. So the return on investment discussion on the energy audit makes a lot of sense, even through design. Environmental, of course, most people think green is just environmental. And the social justice, which is who are we designing for? You had a very good comment there. People are the same. You go to Australia, UK, gets to certain temperatures, you have to put a jacket on. Gets to a certain time, you need your water, you need to drink something, you need to sleep. Well, we're the same. So in those parameters, there's no reason why we shouldn't be designing green, yet being economically just. But it depends when you start. And I had a long discussion this week on a new project coming up. And I said, look, if you don't start with green building initiatives now, and do it later, how much does it cost to move a wall? So in this room, if we were to move this door to the back, how much would it cost? We have contractors in here. I'm sure they know the percentages they'll add on top of that, because, you know, how many times have you gone to site and the owner says, oh, I don't like the look of that, can we just move that? And you know how much it costs. If that was done during design stage, it would obviously be cheaper. And it's the same with green buildings and green initiatives. It's not a matter of adding on later. So there's the business case for green building report on the World Green Building Council website. That's available there. Shows all the different costs. And to get a green building, it's everyone. It's not just architects, engineers, one person or the other. And one of the things we've started implementing is FM teams, facilities managers. We get them on board during design stage. And if we can't get one company, we get the few that need to tender for the project to do the operational costs and do some comments on the building, on how they would run the building before we go to tender. So that's been interesting, but it's being adopted. That's Nairobi. You can see the difference between 1982 building there and 2002. So we thought we're going ahead, we're fantastic, we've got these new technologies, we can buy things direct from China, we have the port in Mombasa, and you'll see a lot of glass buildings for all those who've been coming through. And this is becoming a major discussion because people are asking, what's our vernacular architecture? Is it glass buildings? Is it Dubai-like buildings? Is it New York building? Have we lost it? We are the equator. Why are we putting HVACs in as the first thing of design before we even finish building or designing the facade? You know, that's the question that's going around. More of those. So Nairobi City Centre got so packed that there's some land awarded for expansion, and this is what's happening in Upper Hill. The energy consumption of those buildings is what made the Energy Regulatory Commission bring in a new policy of auditing. You have to audit every 3 years and have an energy management policy that runs through, and you have to show your savings. The other side of it, so we have glass buildings, then we have collapsing buildings, which is quite sad because a few developers with the cash flow issues, yes, there's money coming in, banks are happy to lend, but the developer decides they're the engineers and they're the architects and they're everything, and you can bribe to get licenses. You can bribe to get everything. Everything has a price, so to speak, except green building. So this is quite sad. And it's trying to move people from the mentality of this to a green building. You can build that. It'll be cheaper, but use the professionals. newest trend, so to speak. Some big organizations have decided, right, we're on the equator, so why not go green anyway? It'll save us money. So that's KCB Bank that was targeting LEED certification. And this is the Coca-Cola building, targeting LEED as well. But you can see the difference in the architecture and the design. With the Coca-Cola building, the issue of security, you can see how they've dealt with it in the building aspect. So the Kenya Green Building Society has to accept and adopt security as one of the pillars of sustainability in Kenya. Because why would you put people in buildings that they're not comfortable in, that they can't use, because you're worried for one reason or another something will happen. So you have to actually consider security of the people in the building in the design. So some of the other aspects, and this is some of the buildings targeting certification. We have the Guided City Master Plan. That's targeting Green Star certification. The main building there, the retail mall, went for LEED, because at that moment we didn't have the contextualized report. The rest of it is office and residential. First buildings to be registered with Gbcna, they'll be the first ones to be certified. It was amazing how easy, so to speak, that to adopt a rating system, a framework that everyone understands what they need to deliver. It was quite straightforward. And we'll see what we get at the end. Obviously, there was a target for 6-star or day 1, which went to 5-star. And we'll see if it ends up at 4-star or 5-star. So there's a Two Rivers master plan as well. It's on, I think, 300 acres or more. That's targeting community certification. So they're pushing the boundaries as well. There's a young adult housing, so the developers are seeing that we can't keep adults or students in ramshackle houses and houses that expect them to actually build green once they complete university. So house them in green housing. They understand how it works, so that it's easier for them to actually adopt. There's Nairobi Business Park. These are some of the projects. So going back to the core of green building, I've talked about society, legal reasons why we should go, priorities, our targets. But the core of it, whether you go for certification, whichever certification you go for, is reducing demand in passive design, using efficient solutions, so low flow fixtures, efficient lighting, if you see, and then commissioning and decommissioning, so that's the monitoring that was mentioned. Just 3 basic things that we can adopt as professionals in the industry. And there's no shortcuts. You mentioned about disabled access to buildings. I don't know how many times I've seen that in Nairobi, where I think the council came and said, oh, you need to add something here, and they just added to where it was pointed. So I don't know who can access that. Or this, who did that? This is our construction industry, this is our industry. So we need to think outside the box, even when we're doing green buildings. Let's not just design, then put PVs on top and call it a green building. Let's balance the passive elements, And it all works differently for different areas and for different clients. Let's do that. A bit more of that stuff that we don't want to do. So you wonder what do you say to this? So that's what we're dealing with in Africa. Just a reminder of the Green Building Councils, and thank you, but I'll show you a video of one of the projects as well. So this is one of the projects, that's the one that's targeting Green Star certification. It's the first one to go for it. They took a very bold step and said, look, why not? But the good thing was the developer understood the benefits. And it wasn't just the benefits for the people, it was the economical benefits that they were like, yes, ticks all the boxes.